Now, to interpret recipes, you need to convert them to what's called baker's math. I'm not going to ask by a show of hands who knows it. Malcolm, um, Jeff Pavlik, of course, knows baker's math. He's a baker. In baker's math, we reduce all recipes to a ratio of ingredients. Now, I hope you can get your heads around this concept, the ratios of ingredients. So in baker's math, there is an assumption, this kind of weird kind of math, is flour is 100%. So however much flour, it doesn't matter if it's 20 grams of flour or 2 million grams of flour, it is always in this recipe going to be 100%. Now, the next most important thing in flour, in bread, the thing that makes it bread, that makes it a dough, that makes it kneadable, that makes it bakeable, rather than, say, friable on a skillet, is the water ratio. You need to get to about 50% water in order to have a workable dough. So when you look at a historic recipe, whether or not there's any numbers in it, what you know for a fact is it has to have at least 50% water, because less than that, it's just pretty much not going to work. Now, a bagel has 55% water, is a typical bagel recipe. So if you are a baker, you know baker's math. If you look at a recipe that says 100% flour, 55% bake, 55% water, knowing what you know about the bread culture of your time, you know there is no bread at 55% except the bagel. And the bagel, for those of you abroad, you are in Malaysia and may not know this bread, it has a very, very, very fine crumb. Actually, I should have a bagel lying around because I got one from my daughter for breakfast and she didn't eat all of it, but I don't see where it is. It's a very, very fine crumb. Now, the bread that I make, the standard bread I make for pizza, for sandwich bread, loaf bread, English muffins, I make it has 60% water. So 100 grams of flour, 60 grams of water. And then, of course, there's going to be some yeast. There may be some salt. Salt is always optional, but there'll be some yeast or leavening, which I'm not showing you here because it's not important. Now, the Fresh Loaf, it's a really good website. Their baker's math formula for French bread is 66% water. And if you think about it, French bread usually has a slightly larger crumb structure than a sandwich bread. So it begins, really, I would say, begins at 66. I usually make my French breads at 70 and 75%. Now, ciabatta is this invented French bread that the invented Italian bread that Italian baking industry actually formulated and gave to the world. This is a true story. You can trust the Wikipedia on this. And this is a bread with a lot of hydration. So, it doesn't make a tall loaf. It's so wet, it cannot make a tall loaf. It has these really, really big air holes. And the moisture content with that usually begins at 80%. And it can go all the way to basically a batter. Some artisan bakers pride themselves on making an actual bread out of something that's 1 part water and 1 part flour. But reason I'm spending time on it this way is as we begin to interpret the historic recipes into baker's math, suddenly you can see that it's the same as the breads you're already making. Now, in the upper right-hand corner is this really, really picky baker's math chart that converts the percentages to words. Stiff and dry, 58 to 60%. Soft and sticky, 65 to 67%. Now, all of these numbers in that kind of specificity depends really on your flour. There's variability. But when we're reading these recipes, we are going to be reading words. light, firm, like light. And those words are tied to cultural understandings of these flour to water ratios. And they are going to be more important to us. They are more important in interpreting the recipes than the numbers that may or may not be there.